Cool, so the show started. This is the NWC show, Ep.11. And if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's GG at GGonwrestling. Check out the podcast. There's something about wrestling wherever you get your podcast from. Thanks for having me. Glad to finally meet you and excited to talk wrestling on a Saturday.
Yeah, man, it's weird talking to somebody at a normal kind of time because I'm normally speaking to Americans, which is always like 5 hours, 8 hours different, and it's like so confusing to try and get it in. But it's good to be like during the day, speak to somebody like normally. I feel awake, which is unusual. So the way we always kick these off is by asking, what got you into wrestling? Like, what was the moment that you saw it and you were like, this is my jam that I need to watch?
For me, I mean, I think I've kind of discussed it on my podcast a few times. For me, it's just, I don't think there was a moment. It's just always been there because I've got an older brother and I think my dad watched it quite a lot. So yeah, literally from birth, it was just, something I've always watched, always had on. I remember, going to nursery at probably like 3 or 4, however old we are when we go to nursery. And I would go in the afternoon. So me and my dad, or me mainly, would stick on a VHS and I'd be sat there watching, Royal Rumble 95 or whatever it would have been. And so, yeah, it's just something that's just always been there for me. I don't know. I couldn't tell you when it started because it's just literally been from birth.
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, it was people who have listened to this podcast have heard this story like 11 times now, so they probably will be like, we get it, man, calm down. But I was in my mum's friend's house and it was on the TV and I must have been like 4 or 5, like I was really young and I just stood and watched the whole thing. And then like my mum didn't encourage me to get into it or anything like that. Back then, which was 4 or 5 would have been like 95, I think. I can't remember. 95, 96 would have been about that time. And I just remember always liking it, getting figures, never really watching it until like 98, 99 when I got some VHSs and stuff like that. And then I just fell in love with it. I was balls deep in it, to say the least. Everything wrestling was my life.
Yeah, see, because I don't know if a lot of these VHSs were like hand-me-downs from a brother but yeah, I just, even like WrestleMania 9, I remember being like something I was just watching constantly. And I would have only been actually maybe 1 or 2 when that actually happened. But for me, it's just something I kind of grew up with, which sounds weird because I technically didn't. But
no, man, 100%. I think like when you get it, you try and catch up. So for me, it was like kind of in that primary school phase when it got really cool. I didn't have Sky or anything growing up, so I didn't get to see it because it was always on the paid stuff. When it was WCW at Channel 5, that was me, like Sting. I was like, this is a wrestler, Hulk Hogan. Then when I got older, I was obviously getting like I don't know if you would remember the DVDs called Tagged Classics. So we'd have 2 kind of classic pay-per-views in it.
Yeah. I used to get them from MVC, if you remember that. That's a deep cut. It was like a HMV.
I don't think we had that here in Scotland. So obviously, there's differences in our shops between Scotland and England sometimes. But
yeah, that's going to freak people out. They're not going to realise. They think it's all one place.
See, I mean, the Americans are always like, oh, it's like, this place? And I'm like, no, it's Scotland. We don't have like stuff like that. It's like, or like the prescription thing's the one that always gets me. How much does it cost here? Like, oh, we don't pay for our prescriptions. It's just free of use. Yeah. And then they're like, but England doing? I'm like, it's 2 different countries. It's the same union, but different countries. Let's say. Yeah. But no, one thing I always just remember it being there, getting those tagged classic ones, and then getting back into like the older stuff, like the 80s, the 90s, the in your house ones, and just falling in love with wrestling. It was just one of my passions for when I was younger. I don't know why, it's just always been that kind of way. Like, I suppose if you ask any wrestling fan, why do you like wrestling when you know it's fake? You're like, I don't know, I just love it. I like the characters, the athleticism. It's just fun. And it kind of...
And then it's kind of transitions to, when we're kids, it's the cartoon, it's the colours, it's the, big characters. Because I was going to say, I mean, like Ultimate Warrior was a big one for me growing up. And when I was actually kind of watching current wrestling, or at the age where, I was 4 or 5, he wouldn't have been in it, but he was one of my favorites. But I just think, when you get older, it kind of transitions into more so the stuff I like is, the backstage kind of stuff and the decisions that go into booking these events or these programs. And just understanding, right, why is he the champion and not him? And because someone has to write this stuff. It's not, like sports where the better team wins effectively. It is to a degree, but there's also this element of, who's got the rub backstage and, that kind of stuff I really find interesting as you get older.
Yeah, definitely, man. So I'm in business. I'm kind of like self-employed and stuff like that, and I love how like the back office stuff. So I wanted to be a wrestler when I was younger, but now I probably
We
wouldn't
all
go do
did.
it. And so I went to try and do it. I went to do training. I had a few matches,
Really?
but I slipped out the ring and broke my neck, so I had to stop. But
Bloody hell.
so it was like
Yeah,
this
sorry,
whole.
you can't just say that casually. What happened?
So it was just me. I'm like a really clumsy person, like insanely clumsy. So I was just climbing at the ring and I slipped. I fell, and falling at the ring, I went like that way. My head hit the mat and just I broke my neck. But
Wow.
it was like 6 weeks before I went to the doctors as well. And when I went in, they were like, "How are you? Are you not in severe pain?" I was like, "I'm like I'm in like really bad pain." But I mean, just since then, no, like you can't do that anymore. And
Oh,
silly me, I
that's a
decided to go
real
do.
wrestler. That's a real
I,
wrestler's mindset. 6 weeks later, I'll get it checked out.
Man, I'm still the same. Like last year, I tore my calf muscle. So I'm an extremely competitive person. If anybody knows me, is listening to this, they'll tell you that I'm the most competitive person you could ever meet. And I was playing What's the Time, Mr. Wolf? I don't know if you know in
Of
England what
course,
that
yeah. Yeah.
is. So I was playing that in lockdown, stuff like that, having to play it in the house. I jump over the couch, landed on the wrong way, and completely tore my calf muscle. But
No way. Just playing Mr. Wolf with your kids? Is that
she was trying to beat me, and the competitiveness came out of me, man. And I just jump over it, tore the calf muscle, and I didn't go to the doctors. I just left it. It was like 8 weeks later. I had to go get something. I think it was just to get my daughter her Jags and stuff like that. And they were asking how I'm doing. I was like, my leg's a little bit sore. I was like, I think I've done this to my calf. And they were like, you do know like you need to come to the doctors when you're doing that, don't you? Like you need to get painkillers and stuff. And I was like, I just went back to the gym. I was alright. I was picked up some weights, and so I still got that stubborn mindset, man.
wow? I'm surprised you didn't make it in wrestling with all these injuries.
No, man, I decided to do the silly thing is taking part in like Muay Thai, MMA kind of stuff after they were like, you can't do wrestling. So in my brain, I was like, well, I can go do like real fighting for a change, which it
Yeah.
didn't work out either because I ended up getting to the point where my neck was so sore that it was like, you need to stop that. But I am just a competitive person. So
Wow.
what's one thing that you hate about today's business? So what's one thing? Is it the storytelling? Is it what's something that you don't like?
It's probably a bit too broad, but I really find it difficult to watch the weekly WWE shows at the moment. There's obviously some good moments. The Roman stuff's okay. It has its moments. I honestly don't know how they're going to keep his heat going if they are waiting on The Rock to come back. I don't know how they're going to keep that going long enough. But yeah, I mean, as I said, yeah, it's a bit broad, but it's just disappointing, and the show just isn't as good as. I mean, obviously it's different. I've grown up quite a lot, so it's a different product entirely to what we were used to in the Attitude Era and things like that. And I'm not one of those people bring the Attitude Era back because I understand that times have moved on greatly, and we're not having bra and panties matches every week anymore. That just can't run anymore. But yeah, just I don't know, just some of the choices that you find that Vince or whoever it is making just don't sit right with me. I mean, that we read recently about him obviously not being very fond of Aleister Black or Andrade, and the fans even understand how talented these two people are, and it's just things like that you just boggles your mind sometimes, the choices they make. And I mean, to be really specific, currently I'm not a fan of Edge winning the Rumble at all. I know a lot of people are behind it, and I get the story, I get it. He's been out for a while, it's his first big run back, and the whole return last year at the Rumble and winning it this year, it makes a nice story. But for me, I want some new blood up there. I want some new talent, and there's so much of it there. There's so much of it that's just not being used, I feel, properly. And yeah, the stories are just not as good. When they try and do comedy angles in WWE, it just never works. Like sometimes I watch AEW and I'm legitimately laughing, like, genuinely chuckling. And WWE, more often than not, their style of humor is just, and that's all from Vince. I mean, I read recently about the Mark Henry, Mae Young stuff, because I was having, just for Valentine's Day, I was looking at some wrestling love stories, and that's the best one. And Mark Henry came out, didn't he, and said the whole giving birth to the hand, he's got no idea why, and it was literally just to Vince, so Vince could pop himself. And it's just that style of humor that just doesn't sit right. And you had the whole Lashley with his sisters, and just some stuff like that. It's very hokey, and it's just genuine. There's no wit, if you know what I mean. It's not very witty, whereas AEW's product can genuinely be quite funny sometimes.
I totally agree with you, man. Like with storytelling, I would say I liked Edge winning it. If it was me to book it myself, I would have made his comeback that he done last year this year and let him win it, because it would mean more, instead of from having like a Randy Orton thing and then just like he's away, then now he's back. Like it would have just meant more like he's coming back from a neck injury, he wants to win the Rumble, COVID stuff, all that kind of stuff that's going on, and he wins it. It probably would have got a bigger pop than what it did. But
I just think Daniel Bryan's right there. You've never, you've done wrong by not giving him that win 2016, 2017, whenever it was.
16. I'm sure, I can't remember, man.
But I thought maybe now this is the year to really, put that right. And Edge has already had a win. He's already had the Rumble win. He doesn't need another one. And you can build matches around Edge's name alone. So you could have, and the dirt sheets are saying they've got no idea what they're doing with the WWE title this year yet. So, I mean, you could have just done that with that, and Edge and Roman could have had this story already.
Yeah, I just think, for me, I liked it because I like Edge. I think it just adds that little kind of bit more to it. This is one of the things that I love about wrestling is, I know on Twitter, if you disagree with somebody, they'll go off on that. But I love when people can have two different opinions and talk about it. But the comedy stuff, man, that gets me. Like the My Whole thing with Nia Jax. Every time I done the same thing you just done there when I seen it. In the review, I was like, I need to say this. I literally need to say this on my channel, and I don't want to do it. But
I literally couldn't. That was just typical. But it's typical. I think it's just typical.
And as well, when like as we get older, the comedy might get a little bit like hokey, doesn't feel right. But then you need to remember, if you're a kid and you're like 7 or 8, and somebody hits it in my hole, you could be in stitches. Like if we were in primary school, that would have been like the whole thing for like the next week, 2 weeks, talking about like your hole and stuff like that. But
that's the difficult part, though, isn't it? It's trying to understand that it's not for you, and that's the problem. We grew up with that, and I'm quite precious to WWE, and right here I've just got loads of like figures of legends and old magazines and stuff. I'm fond of it all, and I've just really like not sour on it. I'm always going to watch the events and stuff, and I'm always going to know keep up with what's going on. But to me, I think it's just AEW coming through, and that's just kind of put it all into perspective. When I can finally sit there for 2 and when I switch over to WWE, I can't sit there for 2 hours watching it.
Definitely, man. I'm not the biggest AEW fan. Like I like what they're doing. I think some of the stuff that they do is a little bit like, who really cares? Like the Kenta stuff. Come
on!
I love Kenta, man. I've watched them since 2009, back in like old Japan days, like when he was a jobber. But like my fiance was watching it with me when he came out. She's not a big wrestler. She likes wrestling. Watches it every now and again. Mostly WWE. She doesn't have a clue who he is. Isn't interested.
And I think they didn't do it justice. I don't think they introduced him as well as they could have possibly. But I don't know. I kind of, and I know I know it doesn't help them become mainstream and get the viewers and try and transcend kind of popular culture. But to me, I like knowing who that is. Do you know what I mean? For me, because I think I know who that is. That's Kenta. Do you know what I mean? It's like an inside thing, and that's what I think. I love that AEW do that stuff. They do have kind of inside terms, and especially with BTE as well, they go really deep and kind of break the fourth wall and use inside terms, and that doesn't help break the walls down for like the popular culture and transcend that. But for me, it's just I love it.
Yeah, but us as wrestling fans, we get it. We love it.
Yeah,
Like, that kind of stuff is cool. For us, you can still have that place, but as a new business, you do have to get those new eyes. Like, if you turn
nah, of
into
course.
watch it, and like my friend's just getting back into wrestling, and he tunes in and he's like, Jericho's still wrestling, and he's like, Sting's still wrestling, and that's all he knows. Like, everybody else, he doesn't know who it is. And last time he watched it was 2006, so like he literally knows Jericho, Sting, Jake the Snake Roberts, and like everybody else is just like,
But they've got to make new stars. They have to, and that's the problem with I think WWE struggle with. And yeah, I know it's kind of contradictory because, like you said, you've got your Jericho, your Sting, and all that at AEW, but there are legitimate new stars there, and you have to take the time to invest in those. You can't just expect to watch wrestling and see Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior and things like that anymore. It does have to move along, and that's what I kind of sour on when you bring an Edge back, and just to we need to kind of move forward with this, and instead of just trying to relive the past 5 years and keep bringing people back. That's what I just kind of, and I know, as I said, it sounds contradictory because you just brought back Sting and Jericho, but I think they've done it right with those.
no, 100%, man. I like AEW. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still a brand new company. They've still got a lot to learn. Like, they're new in the business. They still have maybe they're like a year in, 2 years in. They still have like a lot to kind of pick up. Storytelling, national audience, global audience. Like, it's still kind of building. It's like, I would describe it as TNA younger, like the younger TNA when it was kind of good. It had like the AJ, Sting was coming in, had Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe. Like, you go down that young
Yeah.
kind of TNA roster, you're like all of these guys. Then obviously they dropped the ball on it. I don't think AEW is going to do that, but we do need that time. Like, I always say when somebody's like, oh, AEW's just got these guys I don't care about, I'm like, you need to give it time. Like, 5 years,
Yeah.
Kenny Omega could be the biggest. I love Kenny Omega. I think he's the best wrestler in the world, and I have loved him again since I was 18, 19, first discovered him on like a Japanese tape, and I was like, this guy's amazing. But like, you're not going to get like a new fan that sits down, watches it, and goes, he's a great, like, I'm going to buy into this guy. What they need to do is like invest some time. I know they try and do it with like the social media stuff, YouTube. There's a lot there. They're still learning, man. The way I always describe it is you need to give them some time. WWE's Disney of wrestling. They know how
Yeah.
to make stars. If they can't buy you, they're not going to work with you. And AEW are trying to open doors to work with different people. They're like the stuff with Impact Wrestling just now. It just looks like AEW want to work with them to get the Good Brothers. So it looks like
Yeah. Maybe.
it looks kind of like, but I know eventually it's going to. Well, hopefully eventually it's going to turn into like some like really cool storyline. Like maybe Impact tries to invade, like you are stealing our top talent, so we're going to invade you or something like that. But I just think it it's kind of older school wrestling in AEW as well. Like, it just takes its time. It's advancing stuff forward, and you need to let it grow. A lot of people just forget you need to give it time as well.
I just love that they are legitimate fans of wrestling that have started this. The Young Bucks, Cody, Kenny, they're all fans. And Tony Khan is the biggest, and I don't want to use the phrase, but wrestling mark there is. He and you if you sat there and watched an interview with Vince and then an interview with Tony, you would tell straight away who the bigger wrestling fan is. Tony knows his stuff and the way he talks about wrestling, and he's got a real passion for it. And, maybe Vince 20, 30 years ago may have had the same kind of bright eyes about the whole thing, but I respect Tony Khan so much. He's a legitimate fan. His booking is brilliant. The stuff that he actually comes up with is actually just great stuff. And yeah, and what they've managed to achieve in these 2 years, opening this forbidden door and starting these working relationships with other promotions, to really start knocking on Vince's door and saying, look, we're here. And when I show people AEW, they look at it and they go, wow, this looks like wrestling from 99 2000. The presentation of it's a bit grittier, a bit more stripped back. WWE is so overproduced, and it's so different now, whereas AEW, it kind of just looks the part, like an old school WCW or TNA or that kind of thing, and that's what I really appreciate.
Man, I totally agree. I love the look, the AEW kind of look, the arena, and a lot of people misconstrue. Like, see, when I'll feel it hard on AEW sometimes. Like, I'll be like, oh, it might not be that good, or even NXT, WWE. I love wrestling, everything. Like, you put a wrestling show on, I'm going to sit and watch it. I don't care what it is. It can be the worst show ever, and I'll still sit and watch it because I like wrestling.
Yeah.
I want everybody to succeed. AEW, Impact, WWE. I want everybody to be the best in the world, because we win eventually. Obviously, creating content, we get to make content, but the wrestling fan just sitting watching wrestling every single day, pretty much. You can do different matches, different shows. It's just, I think it's everywhere just now. And that brings us to the next question. Like, what's your favourite thing about today's wrestling? What's, you like sit somebody down and be like, this is a good point about wrestling? What would it be? Oh.
No, I've got an Orange Cassidy figure in front of me. I don't know. It's just AEW. It's just so good. I just love the emphasis. I don't know if I could give you one specific thing. I'm just going to reel off just everything I love about AEW. I love the tag team division. I've always been so hot on tag teams, and I don't really want to backtrack, but this is something I don't like on the flip side of WWE is the tag team division. Growing up, I loved the Steiners, Legion of Doom, and these real tag team units. But with WWE, it just feels lazy sometimes, where it's, right, we don't have anything for you. We don't have anything for you. Right, let's just chuck you together. You can be a team for a bit. And it just doesn't work. Whereas AEW have this established tag team division with just a deep, deep talent pool. And they're so kind of self-aware that they know that there's a story that I think the Bucks said about TH2 where, they know they're a brilliant tag team, and they've got such a deep talent pool that all the tag teams are aware, look, sometimes you're going to have to sit out and sit on the bench for a bit, but we'll bring you up. And TH2 have worked a couple of weeks on Dynamite, and, someone else will come up, and, they're aware of that, and they use as many people as they can. And yeah, my favorite, let's nail it down. My favorite thing about wrestling right now is probably the whole Adam Hangman Page arc. I think they've just done it so well. It's so subtle. It's long storytelling, which we just don't see in WWE. They're too quick to just, turn over stories just because they've got to get to that next pay-per-view. It's always like a chapter to get to that next pay-per-view. If they did this kind of story there, it would have been over 4 months ago. But the way they're just letting it simmer, and granted, a lot of it's been on BTE. Would you watch a lot of BTE? Have you seen?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I watch everything about wrestling. So
yeah, but I get the frustration for some fans that a lot of the story has been told on BTE. But regardless, it's just been such a good story from the start. He's just such a relatable character. He's not a larger than life person. He's just your everyman. He's someone relatable. He's got problems with his friends. He's got a drinking problem. He's trying to find his way in life. And, it's a slow burn. And I really want to see this culminate with, the Good Brothers and Kenny destroying the Bucks at an Impact show. And we see a horse trailing up. Hangman gets off. And just heads to the arena, maybe with the Dark Order behind him, and that whole thing. And just the way they've really created this world where there's so many moving parts and everything intertwines and nothing's forgotten about. Last week, Hangman, he's having his dealings with Matt Hardy. He walks off and bumps into the Dark Order, and there's this whole awkward moment like, oh, I'm going this way, you're going this way. And they've already in these 2 years built up all these intertwining angles and stories that just don't go unnoticed. We're not idiots. We know that these two guys have interacted before, and there's always callbacks to it. And I just think they do that so well. Their storytelling, I think, is brilliant.
Definitely, man. Hangman Page is probably my top wrestler just now. I love everything he does. I just think it's cool. Like it bringing that. It feels like the old early 2000s. Like he just feels like a wrestler for a change,
Yeah.
instead of from feeling like a somebody in a movie or somebody like you could never be like. You know what I mean? Like it gives you that realism aspect to it, and I think he's great in the ring as well. Can't wait to see him get the belt eventually. Which
But that's
hopefully,
it though. But that's what I love. We all kind of know he will get the belt. We all
Mhm.
want him to get the belt. They know that, but they're not rushing it. Even the tournament they had, I think I was sat there expecting, right, Hangman's going to win this. We're going to get Hangman already for the title. Oh, no, 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 not just yet. Hold your horses. That was a Hangman pun.
I know.
Uh, um, yeah, they're just so kind of they show such restraint, which I think is just wonderful. And just to give an example of a really brilliant moment with Hangman, 2 weeks ago was it, where the Dark Order gave their final, "Are you going to join us?"
Yeah.
He says no. They've got the banners ready. The conga line starts, and it's just, I thought that was just so clever and just so funny. Like I was literally just laughing out loud, and you don't get to do that as much as you'd like to with WWE.
Man, I totally get. There's, like I say, there's things AEW are still trying to learn, but they hit it out the park with some characters. I would say, like, so for me, tag team wrestling, I like it. It's good. I love the kind of Steiner Brothers, Harlem Heat, like the bigger guys. AEW specifically go out to hire tag teams. WWE kind of just feel like they go out and hire single guys, and then when they hire them, they go, right, we'll put you in a tag team.
Yep.
When they've been used to doing single wrestling for 10 years,
Yeah,
which Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, which is,
exactly.
I'm like,
Perfect example.
why have you done that? But yeah,
Because
man,
they've got nothing for them. They've got so much talent that they just don't know what to do with. And, they just chuck people together, and it's just such a shame.
yeah, man, I think everything's got it, like its time and place. Like AEW, I know some people are like AEW is perfect, other people are like it's not. I just prefer to just like wrestling. I think AEW storylines, the tag team there is good, but sometimes the storylines can kind of like the what they call. I've totally forgot their name. Chris Jericho,
Inner
MJF,
circle. Inner
Inner
circle.
Circle. Don't know why that left my brain there. The Inner Circle stuff, when it was like, okay, that we're going to have a match to decide who will be the tag team, and then the following week it's like a battle royale with the other team of Inner Circle in it. That kind of stuff can be a little bit annoying, but it makes it. I don't really care, to be honest with you, but it's just like some storytelling like that can be nitpicky for people.
Hmm.
If you look at like the Sting stuff, it does get Sting's my favourite wrestler of all time. So me saying this is like just somebody backhanding me. It, he's such a. I love everything he does, but it kind of feels like they don't know what. It feels like they started it too early, and then they were like, okay, we need to try and like push it.
Stretch
Okay,
this out.
we need to stretch it out, because sometimes it just feels like when Sting came out to the ring, Darby Allin's in a body bag, getting dragged away, and then Sting just kind of like tries to like kind of walk away, and you're like, why did you come out then? Just stay in the back, protect
It,
him.
it was the sheer fact of, right, I'm going to address this next week. Like, you're going to wait a whole week? Like, he's just been dragged away by a car.
And then
That was
then
just.
for me, that's when I would use social media. Like, how can they not have him make a video on social media like to address it? Because then you'd be able to get people to come and check your social media out. Obviously, a lot of people avoid the BTE stuff because they just don't watch it. People don't have time to sit and get that. But then you can use social media a little bit more wisely that way. But I get what you mean, man. But sometimes when it's like, we'll address this next week, you get that in WWE as well. Like,
Yeah.
somebody's been attacked, they stand up, they face off, and it's like, okay, I'll see you next week about this. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we're gonna have a chat next week about this. But I just, yeah, with that whole Sting thing, what I think they didn't do themselves justice by advertising it every week. I think that was the problem. They were in a catch-22. They had to advertise it. They had to get eyes on the show. But saying every week, oh, we're going to interview Sting, we're going to interview Sting. If it had just happened and it was just a segment on every week, I don't think people would have been too sour on it. But I think it's because they've promoted it so much every week that it's, and then it doesn't really deliver every week to a degree, apart from this week, obviously.
I think, see, like with Sting, all they had to do was have him come in. Like, Darby looks just like the Surfer Sting with a little bit of the kind of 90s makeup on him, the Crow kind of style. Because I love Darby Allin, he's one of my favourite AEW guys, but just have Sting be like the gatekeeper. So like Darby's smaller than like Brian Cage and stuff like that. Obviously they're jacked as hell, but just have Sting like, oh, you have to talk to me first before you speak to the best wrestler in the world, and just give like
just stood in front of him with the bat maybe, and have them Taz, kind of the cowardly heels run in maybe. Yeah, that would probably work.
Just have Darby Allin like this like untouchable kind of person, like, and it would be kind of funny as well. You've got this iconic legend defending this kind of newer guy, which then somebody sits down, sees like a great like Sting, who's one of the best wrestlers that's existed or the most known. You'd be like, who's this guy's kind of chatting out? It just builds up stuff. I think that's the problem with AEW. Sometimes people are too hard on them with that. Like I can say like I say, I like wrestling. People tell me all the time in my comments, like, you're too hard on AEW. Why are you always like hard on NXT? And I'm like, because I want them to do good. Like, this show's literally my opinion. I want them to do good. Hopefully they listen and they try and do something. But I think there's the AEW, sometimes they try to make stuff out of nothing, because these like the newer guys like Darby Allin, nobody who hasn't watched the AEW knows who he is unless they're a wrestling fan. When you watch that on TV, you'll get it. You're like, cool, he's a good wrestler. I like what he's doing. He does kind of something different. But then it's like, okay, so let's put him with Sting. And then they've dragged it out. So then now they're kind of like, what do we do? They've done the same with the FTW championship. Like, why did you bring... Like, for us, watching all DCW and stuff like that, wrestling fans, you're like, FTW championship, Taz back in the day. But now it's like, who really cares about the FTW championship? Why is...
I don't know. I'm hoping that is going to lead to some infighting. Maybe if it starts, they're obviously distracted with this whole Sting thing at the moment. That's obviously going to be kind of the priority to get rid of Sting and Darby Allin. But yeah, I'm hoping that maybe we see eventually some infighting with Hobbs or someone with that FTW belt. Maybe that's what it will lead to. Hopefully.
Yeah, like that's the thing that gets me with him. I'm like, why? Like, you should do something with it. Like the FT, like make it kind of like you could have Cage, Hobbs, Taz. Like, oh, we don't need the AEW championship. We've got our own. Like, but why do we need that? Like, kind of have like that kind of attitude to it. But like, we're talking like this. We're just fans to show the people that make a lot more money than us know what they're doing better than us. But I get what you're saying about.
This is what wrestling's for, though, isn't it? It is an art, and it's for us to dissect. And some people are a bit too harsh on their criticism, and sometimes you read stuff and you're like, "Oh, calm down. It's not like that bad." But it's healthy to just pick things apart, and you do it to a film or to music. It's what it's there for.
Yeah, man. The only thing that I've ever so my channel is try to be positive about wrestling as possible. Like, I don't like the negativity stuff. The like on Twitter, you see a lot of like different creators. They'll maybe like say stuff about each other, or they'll hate one brand, they'll only love the other. Like I said, I love wrestling. I watch every creator. Like, I watch you, everybody else that I've had on this, the elitist, stuff like that as well. I just like wrestling content, so I don't. It's kind of positive as how much I like to keep the channel, but like you were saying about WWE being overproduced, when they put those TVs on the side of the ring, that was hit. And the only thing that's ever made me be like, this is the worst thing ever, is just watching Nia Jax and Lana when they were doing that table, like the table segment for like 6-7 weeks, I think it was, or maybe longer. I was like, this needs to stop. Then they stop it for like 2 months and they have a table match just randomly. Like, what are you doing?
But that's it, though, isn't it? It's just frustrating. Like, especially when it's something you grew up loving, and now for me, AEW have just it's personal preference at the end of the day. But I wish I could sit there and WWE is great, but for me, AEW is just the product that I'm really rooting for, and just because of they're self-made, all of these people, the Young Bucks and all these guys, they've come from nothing. They're just legitimate fans of wrestling, and they've managed to get here, running their own company. And I applaud that, and I respect that so much. And to the point that, everyone, they're going to be champs, and, it's the Cody show, and it's really not. they've done so well to just hold off any of them winning belts. The Young Bucks didn't even win the tag belts for how long? And they even made the tongue-in-cheek joke, we made this promotion to win the titles. What are you doing? And, they're aware of what, the shtick that they could possibly get from the fans. And they do everything they can to subvert that. And I think it's so good. I respect it so much.
100%, man. I would agree with you as well. Like, I just think with the AEW has its kind of place. It's still finding its feet. Obviously, they've been there for a little bit of time. I don't like the fact that Cody doesn't get the belt. I know why he's not going to do it, because he doesn't want to do like that Jeff Jarrett early TNA days when he was going up against like Angle, Sting and stuff like that. You're like, who even cares about you, Jeff Jarrett? Leave. Just nobody's interested in your guitar thing.
Yeah.
But no, I get what he's doing. I hope he goes into a program with Sting. I hope Cody Rhodes against Sting goes into a program. It'll be a great.
100%. There is no way they're bringing Sting in. Cody is sitting there itching. He wants that match, and I think Sting does as well. And now we've seen the bumps that Sting's willing to take. I'm excited for that match. And
the best thing about that, the whole storyline can just be there to put Darby Allin over. It can be the story of Cody goes over and Sting, he work injures him. So like then Sting's like, I'm out, my neck's still too sore. After the match, took me to my limit. Darby's like, I'm going to avenge you, like that kind of story.
Yeah.
And you can get like that.
And you've still got the Darby Cody story that we've seen kind of just happen, like rise up again and again and again. And that's what I'm saying. They've built this intertwining universe, and they can always call back to Cody and Darby because they've put on such great matches, and that story is there ready to just get picked up again. It's brilliant.
100%, man. I think that's something that they do right. But then again, on the flip side, they have some stuff that they do wrong. Like everybody can't do everything correctly. But then when you look at somebody like WWE, the overproducing this, maybe it's just they've got too many writers. Like sometimes when you look at AEW, you can maybe be like they've not got enough writers, they've not found the sweet spot. Sometimes it can feel like a WhatsApp group that they've kind of just like threw a couple of chats in, like, okay, we should do that. And then it's like, I thought you were doing something different, why are we doing this now? But WWE is then on the flip side of that, it's the corporate, if you've ever worked like a job, something I hate about it is that HR, corporate department, everything has to be like legally read and sent through, and you just know WWE's like, it's not wrestling. Wrestling's like just like, okay, this week you're going over, we're doing this. Like we're not trying to do like we're trying to get wrestling good again, but we're not trying to like be, well, when we were younger, like you were saying, the 90s, like that stuff would not go now. Like it was boobs, beers, everything was going. But then like now you've done that, it wouldn't go. And we were kids when we were watching that, which is, you look at your parents sometimes, you're like, I've got kids, I'm like, I'm not letting you watch this kind of stuff. Like when Austin coming out with like the beer truck, he's like beers, there's like the DX bit when the lady puts up a top and the boobs are out and stuff like that. ECW, one night stands. I'm like, you're certainly watching this, guys, but when you're older, you need to watch this.
Yeah.
But I know, man, I just think everybody's too harsh in wrestling sometimes. It needs to just chill out sometimes. Like WWE is, you can be harsh on them because they are the Disney. They're meant to be like the golden standard of professional wrestling. And something that I was talking about last night in a podcast, for me, I would love to see WrestleMania like transcend WWE. So I know Vince will never let that go because that's his legacy in wrestling. But just kind of transcend it. You could have like Omega versus Roman Reigns. You could have Moxley going up against Seth Rollins. Like that kind of stuff would be great.
This is what Omega wants to do. This is his vision, and that really kind of, to his credit, you've got to really put respect on him because he sees. I know it's kind of kayfabe that he's the god of wrestling and him and Callis see more than everyone else and this kind of thing, but it's true. He has this kind of bird's eye view of the industry, and he understands where it needs to be. And WrestleMania should be a super show for wrestling. It's not it's not a chance to bring in celebrities. It's WrestleMania, and Kenny understands that, and he understands that. I can see it getting to the point where, and hopefully not, because I don't want him kind of lose the prestige of the belts. But the way they're going towards Kenny's a wrestling god, Ibushi's a wrestling god, it's going to be like almost right. Who's the god of wrestling? The belts don't even matter now. It's almost like anime where we're just wrestling gods, not even titles. It's about who runs wrestling as a whole, not promotions. And AEW understand that wrestling is bigger than them, but WWE would never ever kind of let their fans know, oh, there's stuff going on over there. Oh no, there's not. Just watch this. Just watch this. Keep your eyes on here.
Definitely, man. I think that's a Vince thing, because if you remember the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago when it was like DX was going in, Triple H was like, "Oh, you're going to another person somewhere else," like for like try to hint to it. But I think Vince kind of has earned that. Like, I know putting WCW to business, put the nail in the coffin for the wrestling business and stuff like that. But like, he worked his ass off from like,
oh yeah,
and got to there. Like, you need to give him some respect about the stuff that he's done as well. Now, obviously, the stuff that he's doing probably the past 2 years hasn't been great. There is good moments throughout it, but like, it's no, you're no like 2003, 4 kind of era when you've got like Lesnar, Eddie Guerrero, Kane, Taker, all these Jericho, Triple H, Batista, all just like great wrestlers one after another. And WWE just feels like you've got a bunch of mid card guys that then they'll go, okay, you can fight the big guy, and then just that's it. Like,
yeah.
so Roman Reigns
right.
Roman Reigns is a big guy. Like, Drew McIntyre's literally from like half an hour from where I stay. So, and the guys in ICW, they stay around about me, but like, they're not going to. You'll never see Drew McIntyre bigger than Roman Reigns, because WWE they want him. Like, when everybody goes, "Oh, it's cool they turned him heel," and it's like, because they had to. They kept him face. Nobody's going to cheer him. Nobody's going to care for him. And it was.
But you can't. I don't think you can even. You can't even pat them on the back for doing it, because it should have happened years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's for me. Oh, it's brilliant. It's great. Roman's doing finally what he should have always been doing. But for me, it's too little, too late, Vince. You should have done this ages ago, ages and ages ago.
And because I've got somebody else from the kind of UK Europe area, what do you think about NXT UK?
I don't watch enough of it. I'll be honest. I want to get behind it because it's a UK brand, and I'm a big fan of Walter, a big fan of Tyler Bate and Trent Seven and these guys. There's just so much wrestling. It's hard to keep track. There's a lot of New Japan shows I need to catch up on, and it's something I would like to give it a chance just to watch the weekly show. But yeah, there's nothing screaming out to me. I mean, I will always watch any Walter match that he's in because he's the man. But yeah, I don't know. I've not watched enough of it, to be honest, and I should really.
No, 100%, man. I'm the exact same. Like, I watched the Walter. I try and watch most of his matches because they're always pretty good. But like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to like just get the motivation to watch NXT UK. I don't know why. It feels like it's like, so NXT still feels like the third kind of the lower levels, which is what they're going to use it for, the minor leagues. But then like NXT UK feels like watching fourth division Scottish football. You know what I mean? Like, there's still some good players in it, but like nobody really cares what's happening here.
Yeah, and I don't think they've done enough. And I think, to be honest, this whole pandemic's affected a lot of plans. I mean, it was going to be Walter versus Balor takeover in Dublin, I think. And who knows how that could have impacted that show and what could have happened. So it's difficult to say, but yeah. And Walter, the problem is Walter won't travel. That's another issue, isn't it? He's very stuck in his ways. He is where he is. He won't travel, so that kind of hurts it a little bit, because you could have Walter go up to the main show and probably get squashed by Roman Reigns, but
but the thought's still there that he could go up and do good. Do you know what I mean? Like, Damien Priest is one of my favourite wrestlers. I've watched him for years again, and when I seen him went up, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. He's going to be in the main roster. And then Bad Bunny came out. Now, I don't know my type of music, know something that I'm into. I get the Americans are we're all kind of still European, we're in Europe. But Spain's like an hour and a half for us. It's no like there's no that much difference in our cultures, but in America you get like obviously the American culture, then the Mexican culture, which is like quite a lot of Spanish similarities. For us, it doesn't really. You putting a Spanish guy out singing, we can just hear that in the city centre. I mean, it's not like a difference for us. So I think that's the tone deaf kind of part of WWE. It's like, oh, I know that they're in America, and I get that. People always say about their American company. Technically, they're global everywhere. They want to do like India and stuff like that, but I get the Damien Priest, and they want to give him that kind of Mexican, Puerto Rican rub. But for us, it doesn't really. We don't really care. Like we'll go speak to a German person, Dutch person. It doesn't really matter. We're so close to each other. So I think that's just the tone deaf part of it. And when I seen them come out with Bad Bunny, and now they're doing the thing with the Miz and Morrison, I was like, I love this guy, and you're ruining him for me. Please don't do it. Don't take it from me.
Always going to happen though. That's that's for you to be blamed for that, because you had high hopes and it was never going to happen.
I know. See, that's the problem. We try to stay positive on the channel. You keep the positive going, and you're like, I'm going to hope. But then the one time that somebody comes up and it actually works, you're like, I knew it was going to work. I kept the positivity. So, who's your favourite wrestler of all time? If you had to pick one wrestler to be like to somebody, this guy is the greatest of all time, who would yours be?
They're two different questions. For me, and I've learned this, or not learned this, but I've realised this recently, I think the greatest of all time is Undertaker. He is the greatest of all time. He's not my favourite, but I think he has to have that name. I don't think there's any denying it. And I think we overlook it because he's just been a constant in wrestling for so long. But yeah, he's the greatest. But my favourite personally is probably Shawn Michaels of all time.
Yeah, man, the Undertaker, I love, he can trend anywhere, you know what I mean? Like he went on Joe Rogan, he says people are too soft now, and everybody's talking about it, and it's like he's still got yous eating out the palm of his hand. Do you know what I mean? Like he's kayfabe keeping it the bad guy when he's saying that. Like he knows he's trying to make people be like, oh, those guys are all just too soft. Why don't you go check them out, see what they're like? Then Roman Reigns comes out, hits out with he's just an old guy hitting out with stuff. They know how to play the game, you know what I mean? Well, obviously WWE know how to do it. They invented the game for modern wrestling pretty much.
Yeah.
But I would say Taker's probably the greatest of all time. Taker,
I don't think you can argue it. I think as a wrestling character, no one's done better work for so long to reinvent themselves. I know there's an argument for Chris Jericho, but he didn't have a character like Undertaker did, and just the sheer time he's been in wrestling, he's just been a constant. And especially, you know, you're possibly the same when you're a little kid, it scares the pants off you. And then, you know, and for me as well, the documentary, and realizing, just understanding how respected he is backstage and how much of a big part he's had behind the curtain, that kind of cemented it for me that he's the greatest. You know, I don't think anyone can touch him in terms of greatest of all time.
Get character work, man. Like there's nobody you can say there's like that character shouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? A guy that was dead coming to the ring with Brother Love, and like that should not have worked. Then you got Heyman, and it makes no sense half the time. Like, why is he dead? What the hell's happening here? But it's just insane, like how much he's done, and he is probably, well, for me, I would say he's probably one. Well, you can't say he's not the greatest because he is one of the greatest of all time. It's like a Mount Rushmore for greatness, isn't it? You can't really just be like, this guy, he's at the front, but then you've got like the guys really, really close at the back. But best wrestler of all time for me has to be Sting, just because that minute when I first saw Sting, I was like, I need to see who this guy is. Like, I need to watch this guy. And his career, I would say that he's the Undertaker for the indies, if that makes sense. Like the TNA stuff and stuff like that. But if that match ever happened, like I would still take that match to this day. I'd just come out and stare at each other. Like, we don't just promo work it, stare. Yeah. Just we don't care.
Even if they just get someone to bloody represent them or something, and they're just managers. But that again, they had it. They could have done it. But instead, you want to give it to Triple H and put Triple H over. This is what I mean. That's why I just get frustrated. They had so much ample opportunity to finally do that match, and now you'll never see it.
When I can't Triple H coming out of that WrestleMania with the Terminators was one of my favourite parts of it because I love the Terminator. But
Yeah.
that match just like the one that got me is at the end when the NWO runs out and I'm like, Sting is like the storyline is he hates you. Like he's the WCW guy and you are the other guys. Why are you coming out? I get you were in the same company, but technically you weren't because the NWO tried to set up a different company. I don't get what you are doing here. But
It's just leaning on nostalgia again, isn't it? It's just something they just always go to. It's just, right, ratings are low, nostalgia.
right, ratings are low. Okay, let's phone Hogan. He'll come back and
Exactly.
but because Taker and Sting were on the exact same card, and I'm like, just miss the two people and just squeeze them together. They would have put on a hell of a match. It probably wouldn't have been a 5-star classic or something that people would have wrote home about, but it would have been like, okay, I've seen it. I'm happy. Wrestling is complete.
That's what we never wanted it or expected it to be a brilliant technical match, but we want to see those two face to face, and now we never will. That's a sad thought.
Definitely is, man. Thanks for that. So, what's your favourite event of all time? What's an event you could watch like?
So, do you mean a specific WrestleMania, for example, or do you mean
a specific kind of event, like a WrestleMania or like a specific Royal Rumble or something like that?
So, I'm going to get a lot of slack for this. For me, I don't know why, but WrestleMania 9, the worst WrestleMania ever. I just love it. I don't know what it is. I think it's just the nostalgia of it. It's just something I just remember just constantly watching that as a kid. That VHS was ruined. I don't know what it is. I just can't. I'm still just trying to understand what it is about it. It's just the presentation of it, Macho on commentary, and I kind of like the fact that going back, watching it when you're older and understanding how much of a nuisance Hulk Hogan is, that he just ran the show and just did whatever he wanted, whatever he felt like. That kind of, it takes away from it, but it adds at the same time because it's you're pulling back the curtain and what are you doing? But yeah, I don't know what it is. That it just when lockdown kind of started and I wanted to I panicked and thought, I'm never going to see my family again, and all this crazy thoughts that's gone through everyone's head. If I wanted to put something on to kind of make me feel warm and fuzzy and nostalgic, it's WrestleMania 9.
Man, I'm with you. And I don't think it's my favourite event of all time.
Oh, definitely not.
But for me, it's something quite similar to that. It's King of the Ring 1999. So that was the first VHS that I got. I remember putting it in. It's the one when Billy Gunn wins the King of the Ring. You've got Austin against Shane and Vince, Taker against Rock. It's not really the best event, but it's just I remember it as a kid so fondly. But my kind of guilty pleasure would be WrestleMania 9. That it's the outsideness, I think, just because it looks different than everything else at hand. But it is a kind of guilty pleasure. It's not like you wouldn't say to somebody, "Oh, I'm going to sit down today and watch WrestleMania 9."
Oh no, you keep that secret. But I think the talent that was on the show as well, it's just it kind of encapsulates that era of your Steiners, Yoko, Brett, Shawn, Lex, Mr. Perfect, Undertaker, Giant Gonzalez. You had all of these kind of Money Inc., Hogan. It's just kind of encapsulates that kind of time frame. And yeah, I mean, obviously there's much better events, and I love a Royal Rumble. Yeah, and obviously I don't want to fanboy AEW too much, but yeah, Revolution was brilliant last year. Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Hangman, Pac versus Orange Cassidy, and so that kind of really sits high up for me as well. And there's loads of Wrestle Kingdom events that were brilliant. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's probably more of a guilty pleasure than my favorite ever event. But WrestleMania 9, I don't know, it just does something to me. Makes me feel warm.
But I'm the same. It's so silly as well. Like the Yoko versus Bret Hart match. You're like, this isn't going to work, and it works. You're like, how does this work? Why does this work?
It was working fine until Hogan got involved.
You forget about that bit at the end, man. But what's your thoughts on Elimination Chamber? What's your thoughts on the one coming up this weekend?
Um, I just don't know, man. I think my prediction is that, I mean, I think they're going to do Roman on last, because he is defending the belt, isn't he? After the Chamber.
Yeah, whoever wins, he's defending
Yeah.
it.
So I think we're going to get a babyface win, possibly Cesaro. Kevin Owens again. I wouldn't put it past them just because they love just booking the same match over and over again. And nothing against Kevin Owens and Roman together. They do put on a great match, but come on, let's freshen it up a bit. Or maybe even Daniel Bryan, you might get the push. But I think whatever happens, babyface wins by the skin of their teeth. Beat down at the end of the show. Roman wins convincingly because this person's just been through that. Edge saves the day. WrestleMania sign point. That's how we go off the show. I don't know what they're doing with Drew McIntyre's side of things, because I was fully going into this. I mean, thinking Randy Orton goes over. There's a reason why Edge is going to announce who he's fighting at Elimination Chamber, because Randy Orton's going to win. We're going to get a face-off. They want to do that match for the belt. They wanted to do it last year. And, if there's anything we know about WWE is nothing's going to stop their plans if they want to do it. So, but now it obviously is looking like it's Edge, Roman. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited about it. Elimination Chamber is always a fun match. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more excited for the next AEW pay-per-view than this one.
And I'm more excited for just Impact Wrestling in this one. I'm really struggling to get motivation to watch this. Like,
Really?
The Elimination Chamber, the kind of now the pay-per-views when it's like the name of the match, they annoy me. But like, well, we grew up back watching the 2002 Elimination Chamber, New Year's Revolution, that kind of stuff. Like great Elimination Chambers, and then they changed it to this like square thing, and the chambers are like weird shaped, and I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the way it looks, and
even the outside floor just doesn't make the sound it used to. It's almost like a padded mat, which, all right, yeah, I get safety of wrestlers, but, the first few, you heard them hitting that metal and it was like, oh, wow.
Like you seen it on their back. Like the first one, especially, like you seen it on their back. Michael's was just covered in blood, and you're like when the confetti comes down and it's sticking to him and stuff, and you're like, oh, this is terrible. This is great. I need to watch it again.
I love it, but I hate it.
Like it's one of those. I can't watch it.
Yeah.
But no, man, Roman Reigns is obviously going to get the win here. I think Jey Uso's going to take the win. I think they're going to try and do like a Uso Reigns kind of. He might turn on me kind of thing, like try and get him to like go down for a pin. But like we were saying earlier, they don't book stuff for a long period, and they've done it with Owens and Reigns, but they've done it, in my opinion, wrong, because they just have a match every week. Like, let's just have a match and Roman wins. Like, it defeats the purpose. Like, if you remember Austin Rock coming into WrestleMania 17, they didn't have a match before it for a good year, 2 years, and it was like they wouldn't touch each other, and when it was a stunner or like hit each other with a beer or something. And when they met in that ring, it was like just explosion, which they could have done where Owens and Reigns are good enough to pull that off. You know what I mean? Like they could have done that. They're arguably better in ring workers, and I don't understand why they've not done that. I'd say Jey Uso gets it. That's what I would say.
The story's just not built, is it? It's just, whereas AEW will have, like you said, they won't touch each other. You'll have these the top guys, that are in a feud. You'll have them you'll see them every week, and they'll have interactions, and there'll be a reason why they're fighting this person or that person. But with WWE, it's just, okay, we'll just do this match again. Maybe they'll have a tag match this evening, like this week, but they're just, and then by the time the actual match comes around, you're stale because, well, I've seen them fight enough. But yeah, like you nailed it on the head. Your Stone Cold and Austin, Rock and Stone Cold days. There was a real build. I can't wait to see these finally, lock up, and it's just not like that.
Yeah, man, that's what made pay-per-views special, because it was like, I need to go get that DVD, or I'm going to go check that out in the network. Like it literally, for me, it's like 2011 backwards, 2013 backwards. Like you've kind of still got some, no great builds at that point, but you've got some there. But the early builds in the 2000s as well, Eddie Guerrero against Brock Lesnar, stuff like that is just a big build from that. But yeah, and then you've got Bobby Lashley, Keith Lee, and Riddle, which I'm not even that interested in. Nia Jax, Baszler, Shayna, Sasha Banks, and Belair, which
that is another thing that I'm really, really getting frustrated with is you've separated these belts. You've finally established a women's tag division, but you've not established it. All you're doing is using it as a prop with the main title picture. And we're just going to see the same story over and over again. Oh, they're feuding and they've won the tag belts. What's going to happen now? Can they coexist? And it's just lazy. Just separate them out. And build that tag division. Why have you got these belts if they're always being lumbered in with the main women's titles? It's just, I don't get it.
Man, I couldn't even tell you what the WWE Tag Team Women's Championship looks like. Like I'd see it when I see it. I know what it is. But like, if you were to ask me to like draw a picture or something, I'd be like, I don't have a clue. Like, I don't even care. Like, I keep forgetting that I've got a Tag Team Championship. Like when I see Nia Jax with a belt, I'm like, what? She got a bit. Oh, the Tag Team Championships. Yeah. I forgot. But it's just then you've got Drew McIntyre, who should win the Chamber. I don't understand why they would take the belt off him. They'll drop it to Randy Orton more than likely if they were going to drop it to somebody, which is going to hurt. Or they'll drop it to Sheamus, which for me, Sheamus has had his time.
Yeah.
When he won the belt before, when he won that World Championship before, it was like, what was the point in getting it then? Like, it was at that point when, if you remember, like WWE was just giving like Ziggler it, like just giving people that was just, oh, here's Ziggler's the champion, Sheamus is champion, fucking just random people. You're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Who's this guy? Why is he the champion this week?
But this, the way you said it as well, oh, they'll probably just put it on Randy. This is the thing. You know what could possibly happen, and it's never a good outcome. Whereas sometimes you know with AEW you might get excited. Oh, they might do this. Oh, I think they're going to do this. I can't wait to see that happen. This is, well, this person's going to win, and you know that's it. And it's just not. You know what I mean? It's the worst case scenario sometimes.
It's the same with NXT, man. You're like, oh, I'm excited to see like the War Games come in or how they're going to do this with the women's division. But then the main roster, you're always just kind of like Jeff Hardy's one of my favourite wrestlers of all time. Why is he in the Elimination Chamber? Send him to AEW. He's going to be able to do better work there than what he is in WWE because he's just a jobber pretty much, isn't he? Like
this is the perfect. This is exactly. This ties into what we were saying earlier though about them not establishing any new stars. All of the Elimination Chamber participants are previous champions. You've got no new stars. Why not just chuck Damian Priest in there just to have a good showing? I know obviously you're doing something separate with him, but or Keith Lee, you know, just someone new, just to get in the mix with all of that and just to see what they look like up against all these main stars. But they're not even doing that.
And then you've got the Raw kind of one when you've got SmackDown one when you've got King Corbin in it, which it's like why is he even there? Sami Zayn, which I like Sami Zayn. I think he's a good wrestler. He's just
has he earned a title shot though? Not really, no.
But he looks like a homeless person. Like my fiance she was sitting, he was on, and I was like Jeff Hardy, AJ versus Sami Zayn. I said it's going to be a great match, the kind of ladder match, which was okay. It wasn't the best match ever, but she was like, "Who's the homeless guy?" And I was like, "Oh Jesus!" Like he's like, he was one of the best wrestlers in the world for a while, but now he's just the homeless guy in TV to a random person. You know what I mean? But finishing off, where can people find you? Where can they get you? I've got your links in the description, but let people know.
So at GGonwrestling on Twitter, and just find me wherever you get your podcast from. There's something about wrestling. A bit behind on episodes. Work has been my real job has been crazy at the moment. So I'm gonna have some more content and just loads of things in the work that are gonna come this year, hopefully.
Awesome, man. So if you wait there, I'll end the cast and I'll talk to you for a little bit after it.
No worries, man.